while since we've had a moment to put certain things on hold so we could sit down and chat and share some thoughts that we've had because of a recent newsletter that you actually typed and sent out. And so we're back on YouTube, been a break. And there's, I think, something that is so important for moms to realize as they go into their year, as they start to hang out a bit more on social media groups and join outings or not join outings. And you titled the article, How to Mine the Gold in Your Own Homeschool Situation. And we had such lovely responses from some of the folk who read it. And we thought it would actually be a great way for us to launch back into YouTube this year and encourage moms. So why don't you go in and explain what your thinking was and how it's applied? We can then go into how it's applied to both of our lives over the years.
I think what prompted the article was many emails that you and I both get via our website and other places from homeschooling mothers who often are in a situation that they think for some reason is less than ideal. And the one that came to mind when I wrote the article initially was, somebody who said she lives on a farm and she feels like her child's missing out on all the opportunities that city kids have to do sports and extramurals and go to museums and galleries and have lots of friends. And she had completely missed all the benefits that her family has of living on a farm, being close to nature, having a slow pace, her child's observing the seasons and the weather, the business of farming, the problems, the staff, how real life works in that place.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the article, and then interestingly, we got a response from another mother who said, we live in a small coastal town, and I'm always complaining that they're wet towels. But that means my kids are swimming at the beach. They're out of doors. They're roaming free. And suddenly she had a whole new perspective on the goals in her situation. And that's the idea that if you're a mother who has to work, recognize this is just a season of your life, and your children are going to learn things that children without a working mum are not going to learn. They're going to see how you manage time and how you juggle the family and your work and your responsibilities. So, yeah, I'm sure you can give other examples of other situations you've come across where mothers think it's a problem, but actually it's an opportunity.
Yeah, the most common one is obviously, well, I live in the city and my children are surrounded by the hustle and the bustle and the noise all the time. But it's exactly the opposite to what the mom and the farm is missing, is that you have immediate access to museums and art galleries and lots of sports and activities. And that actually means that you've got to be very careful about what you choose to do. But you have access to these amazing things. And then on top of it, if you're really longing for that environment that your children can see what it's like, you can hop in a car from wherever you are, and within an hour you're in the countryside. So it's it works both ways, but we can't it's damaging to ourselves and to our family if we spend all our days complaining about what could be on the other side of the fence, because there's positives and negatives on both sides. So rather to kind of dwell in your reality and rejoice in it, knowing that there are so many benefits that you can draw from it. And also, we don't want our kids to look at us and say, Mom's always complaining. Maybe there is something wrong with where we live in or with our home, and then they carry that forward into their own lives.
I think that's something that a parent first has to realize, that we live in a culture that kind of tells us that we need to give our children all the opportunities and this well-rounded life. But actually, if you look back in history at some of the most successful people in different spheres of life, politics or writers or authors or whatever, some of them grew up in cities, some of them grew up in rural areas, but they embraced where they were and developed who they became in that situation. They didn't have this perfect, well-rounded life. And we need to teach ourselves that and then pass that on to our children, that our family's life doesn't look the same as another family's. And that's okay. We are going to benefit from the opportunities that we have. And I think it's a just a shift.
Yeah.
It takes a while for you to recognize that, and then to look for the positives,
Mm.
even if it is a hard season. There's
Absolutely.
always something. If money's tight, well, your children are learning how to get by on a shoestring budget, and to see how you make do and how you scrimp and save. And if you've got plenty of resources, well, then you're in a season where your children can see how you manage that and how you spend it wisely or whatever. Those are just random examples, but there's always a plus side to anything that you might see as a shortcoming.
Sure. And exactly, the thing is, it extends from where I'm living and what benefits I've got around me to every situation in your home. So perhaps you're a family who has just welcomed a new baby in. Your baby becomes the lesson, and everybody learns how to be compassionate and kind and wait their turn, and what it means to pull back and simplify for the season, instead of saying, my children are going to miss out because I'm now hamstrung by needing to stay home or needing to feed baby every 4 hours or whatever it is. So you take what the situation is, and you, first of all, as a mom, and then as your children can learn from the situation. I always looked at my kids and I used to think to myself, that my little one was getting left behind because the oldest was getting all the attention because they needed to do proper maths and reading and that sort of thing. But what I didn't see until a little way in was that there's this trickle down effect that happens in the homeschooling home, so that he was reading before any of the other children had learned to read because he had been exposed to it all the time. And now that all the older children have moved on and he's still studying and working from home, we've got excess time with our youngest child. So it all balances out eventually, in life. And we can't kind of sit here champing at the bit saying, what's happening now is just not good enough. Let's, exactly as you said, titled it, let's mine the gold in that situation.
It's
Yeah,
a season.
absolutely.